Imagine you are 7 years old, and the man who is supposed to protect you, the man whose hands should feel like safety, those hands are what you are most afraid of. You learn to read a room before you read a book. You learn to measure silence. You learn that love in your house has a cost. And you tell yourself, you swear to yourself that you will never end up like her, your mother, standing in the kitchen, eyes cast down, pretending everything is fine. You grow up, you leave, you build something new, and then one day you fall in love. And you begin to understand, maybe for the first time, how your mother stayed. This is the story that Colleen Hoover dared to tell. A story so close to the bone that millions of readers have wept through it, thrown it across the room, and then picked it back up and finished it with shaking hands. It is called It Ends With Us, and it will not let you go easily. Who is Colleen Hoover before the world knew her name? She was not born into literary circles. She was not polished by MFA programs or championed by the establishment. Colleen Hoover grew up in Sulphur Springs, Texas, a small town, a modest life, a family that knew what it meant to struggle. She worked as a social worker. She raised children. She wrote in the margins of her real life, quietly, the way so many women do. Her early novels were self-published. She built her audience reader by reader, word by mouth, one emotional gut punch at a time. She had a gift, not just for plot, not just for romance, but for making people feel seen. Genuinely, uncomfortably, gratefully seen. But It Ends With Us, published in 2016, was different. It was personal in a way her other books had not been. Hoover has spoken openly about drawing on her own mother's experience, a woman who loved a man who hurt her, and who eventually found the courage to leave. This book was not just a story. It was a reckoning. It was a daughter trying to understand what she could not understand as a child. And the world felt it, in ways no one predicted. Years after its release, the book exploded on Book Talk, TikTok's reading community, and became one of the most discussed, most debated, most emotionally devastating novels of the decade. Not because it was sensational, but because it was true. Let us enter the book. We meet Lily Bloom, and yes, her last name is Bloom, and yes, Hoover means it on a rooftop in Boston, the night of her father's funeral. She is 23 years old, newly arrived in the city to open the flower shop she has always dreamed of. She is sitting on a ledge, not out of despair, but out of defiance. A small, private rebellion against gravity and grief. And then a man sits down beside her. His name is Ryle Kincaid. He is a neurosurgeon. He is brilliant, magnetic, the kind of beautiful that makes you feel clumsy just standing near it. He tells her he doesn't believe in relationships, that he has no interest in love, in commitment, in anything permanent. And Lily, who has her own complicated history with love, finds this strangely refreshing. They talk all night on that rooftop, and something begins. But before Ryle, there was Atlas. Atlas Corrigan, the boy Lily loved when she was 15. The homeless boy she secretly sheltered in her family's basement during a brutal Boston winter, feeding him, hiding him, loving him with the full and terrifying force of a teenager's heart. Their love story was written in a journal, Lily's diary, addressed to Ellen DeGeneres of all people, because Lily needed someone to talk to who she knew would never judge her. From those diary entries, Hoover gives us one of the book's most quietly devastating lines. It's called The Consistency of Inconsistency. And it makes you crazy, because you begin to think, if they can be this good sometimes, why can't they always be this good? If you have ever loved someone complicated, those words just hit you somewhere specific, somewhere you thought had healed. Now we go deeper. Because the heart of this book is not a love triangle. It is not a romance in the traditional sense. The heart of this book is a question that Lily Bloom has been carrying her entire life without knowing it. What does it mean to stay, and what does it cost to leave? Lily's father was abusive. She watched her mother absorb his anger, excuse his violence, hold the family together with silence and endurance. And Lily left, physically, emotionally, vowing she would never be that woman. She was certain of it. Certain the way only young people can be certain before life teaches them how complicated the heart is. And then Ryle loses his temper one night, and something shifts. It begins small. It always begins small. A moment of roughness that gets explained away. An apology so beautiful it almost convinces you the incident was a misunderstanding. A gesture so tender afterward that you think, maybe I overreacted. Maybe this is not what I think it is. Hoover does not rush this. She does not let Ryle be a cartoon villain. He is charming. He is loving in the moments between. He has his own wounds, a dead little brother, a grief he has never processed. And the reader, like Lily, finds themselves wanting to believe him, wanting the good version to be the real version. This is what makes the book extraordinary and for some readers unbearable, because we understand. We understand exactly how Lily stays. We understand the logic of it, the love of it, the exhausting hope of it. And then Atlas comes back. He owns a restaurant now. He has built himself a life from nothing. He is everything Ryle is not: steady, safe, a man who has never made Lily afraid. And his reappearance does not make things simpler. It makes them more complicated. Because Lily is not looking for rescue. She is looking for clarity. Hoover writes with devastating precision. Just because someone hurts you doesn't mean you can simply stop loving them. It's not that easy. It's never that easy. No, it is never that easy. And that is the whole book right there, in 2 sentences. Let us talk about what this book is really about. The first great theme is the inheritance of pain. Lily's story is inseparable from her mother's story. She grew up in the wreckage of her father's rage and her mother's silence. She internalized patterns she swore she'd never repeat. And yet, the human psyche is not a clean slate. We carry what we witnessed. We replicate what we know. Not because we want to, but because love, in its most complicated forms, feels familiar before it feels healthy. This is not victim blaming. This is psychology. This is the documented, researched reality of how cycles of abuse transmit themselves across generations. Hoover is not asking us to judge Lily. She is asking us to understand her. And in understanding Lily, to understand every woman, every person, who has ever stood in that impossible place between loving someone and protecting themselves. Ask yourself, what patterns did you absorb from the people who raised you? What do you call love that you might someday need to unlearn? The second great theme is the myth of the good person who does bad things. Ryle is not a monster. He is a man, a real, recognizable, deeply human man who contains both extraordinary tenderness and real capacity for harm. The book refuses to let us off the hook by making him simply evil, because in real life, abusers are rarely simply evil. They are people we love, people who love us, people who are, in most moments, wonderful until they are not. This is the most disorienting thing about the cycle of abuse. It is not constant. If it were constant, leaving would be easy. The cruelty comes in ruptures, surrounded by long stretches of the relationship you fell in love with, and so you stay for the good parts. You convince yourself the bad parts are aberrations. You believe deeply that this time will be different. Have you ever made excuses for someone's behavior, not because you were naive, but because the love was real? Most of us have. That is what this theme is asking. The third great theme is the courage of ending. The title, It Ends With Us, is perhaps the most carefully chosen title in contemporary fiction. It does not mean it ends with Lily and Ryle. It means the cycle ends here, with this generation, with this woman making this unbearable choice. And the ending of this book is not triumphant in the way we want endings to be. Lily does not ride into the sunset. She does not get everything she dreamed of. She gets something harder and more honest. She gets to be the woman who stopped the pattern. She gets to give her daughter a different story. Now let us look at who these characters truly are, beneath the surface. Lily Bloom is, at her core, a woman learning to trust her own perception of reality. This is harder than it sounds. When you love someone who harms you, the entire machinery of that love works against your own judgment. You gaslight yourself before anyone else can. You find the explanation. You minimize the damage. Lily is not weak. She is engaged in one of the most psychologically demanding battles a person can fight, the battle between what she feels and what she knows. Her name, Bloom, is not accidental. She is a woman in the act of becoming. The flower shop is not just a business. It is Lily's declaration that she intends to make beautiful things grow. And when everything falls apart, she still opens that shop. She still shows up. That is who she is. Ryle Kincaid is a masterclass in the literature of the charming man we should be more afraid of. His backstory, the guilt over his brother's death, the walls he built in response, gives us context without giving us permission. Hoover is precise here. Understanding why someone behaves a certain way does not obligate you to endure it. Explanation is not absolution. And Atlas Corrigan is the book's moral north. He represents the road not taken, yes, but more than that, he represents proof. Proof that men can be gentle, that a person can come from nothing and build themselves into someone who adds rather than subtracts from the lives of people they love. His quiet constancy is its own kind of argument. Hoover writes of him simply, "He was my yellow." The color yellow, warmth, sunlight, the opposite of cold and dark, is not a random choice. Atlas is what Lily remembers when everything else turns gray. What did this book do to the world? When It Ends With Us was published in 2016, it was praised but not immediately seismic. Hoover's fanbase loved it deeply, personally, but the mainstream had not yet caught up. That changed in 2021 and 2022 when BookTok discovered it, and the algorithm did what algorithms do with emotional truth. It spread it everywhere. Suddenly, millions of readers were crying on camera about this book. They were sharing the passages that broke them. They were tagging friends and saying, "You need this. I don't know how to explain it, just read it." The book sold millions of additional copies years after its initial release. Colleen Hoover became, quietly and then all at once, one of the most powerful forces in contemporary publishing. But the book also ignited debate. Some critics pushed back, arguing that the romance with Ryle was glamorized, that the novel's framing made abuse feel seductive in ways that were irresponsible. Others argued the opposite, that survivors recognized themselves in Lily, that representing the cycle's complexity was not glamorization, but truth, that this book had opened more conversations about domestic abuse than most academic papers ever would. Both things are worth sitting with. The conversation around this book is part of the book's impact. It did not just entertain, it provoked. It made people argue about what literature owes survivors, what storytelling owes readers, and what we mean when we say a character's choice is empowering. The cultural legacy of It Ends With Us is still being written. Domestic violence organizations reported increased outreach after the book's viral moment. Therapists said clients were bringing it into sessions. A generation of young readers encountered, perhaps for the first time, an honest portrait of what a dangerous relationship actually looks like. Not a villain in a dark alley, but a charming, loving, imperfect man who hurts you and apologizes, and you love him anyway. That is not a comfortable story, but it is a necessary one. Let me be honest with you now. This book is extraordinary at the things it sets out to do. The emotional architecture is precise. The packing of the relationship, the way Hoover meters out Ryle's red flags, the way she earns every one of Lily's justifications is masterful. You do not feel manipulated. You feel implicated, and that is much harder to achieve. The prose is not literary in the traditional sense. Hoover writes with accessibility as her North Star, and she succeeds completely. Some readers who prize style over story may find the writing plain. They are not wrong, but they may be missing the point. Where the book stumbles, slightly, is in its secondary characters, some of whom feel underdeveloped in service of keeping the focus on the central triangle. And the resolution, while emotionally honest, leaves a few threads slightly unresolved in ways that might frustrate readers who want cleaner closure. Who should read this book? If you have ever loved someone complicated, read it. If you grew up in a household with anger in it, read it. If you are young and still forming your ideas about what love should look like, read it. It may be one of the most important stories you encounter. If you work with survivors, read it, because your clients may bring it to you and you should know it. Who should approach with care? If you are currently in a difficult relationship and not in a safe place emotionally, be gentle with yourself. This book holds a mirror up. Make sure you are ready to look. My honest recommendation, read it, and then talk to someone about it, because this is not a book that was meant to be consumed alone. It is a book meant to open mouths, to start conversations, to break the silence that keeps these cycles alive. We come to the last pages. Colleen Hoover did not write this book to tell you what to do. She did not write it to judge the women who stay or to celebrate the women who leave. She wrote it to say, I see you. I see how complicated it is. I see that love is real even when it is also dangerous. I see that leaving costs everything, your identity, your family, your future as you imagined it. I see all of that. And she also wrote it to say, it can end. Not easily, not without grief, but it can end. The cycle of abuse does not require a villain. It requires silence. It requires the story staying inside the walls of one house, passed quietly from one generation to the next like a piece of furniture no one wants, but no one throws away. What Lily Bloom did, what Colleen Hoover's own mother did in real life, in the small town where she was raised, was refuse to pass it on. That is the ending. That is the only ending that matters. Not the romance resolved, not the perfect life assembled, but this one quiet, devastating, heroic act. It ends with us,